The 18th century marked a time of transformation in the American colonies. Town meetings buzzed with political debate, merchants thrived in bustling ports, and a sense of shared identity began to grow. But beneath this progress lay deep divisions, rigid social hierarchies, economic dependence on slavery, and rising tensions with Britain. In this video, we'll dive into the political systems, economic practices, and cultural changes that shaped colonial life, laying the foundation for the revolutionary spirit that would soon ignite. The American colonies each developed distinct systems of governance, reflecting the diversity of their economic and social structures. In New England, town meetings became the centerpiece of local governance. Male property owners gathered to discuss and vote on taxes, community projects, and even school funding. This system fostered a sense of equality and participation, where each voice within the limited framework of property ownership held weight. These meetings would become a model for the democratic ideals later championed in the Revolution. Meanwhile, in the Middle and Southern colonies, governance was more hierarchical. Southern colonies like Virginia relied heavily on county courts and assemblies. Wealthy plantation owners dominated these systems, using their influence to pass laws that favored large landholdings and entrenched the power of elites. Virginia's House of Burgesses, established in 1619, was the first legislative assembly in the Americas, yet its composition reflected the sharp divisions of colonial society. Despite regional differences, a common thread united colonial governance: self-rule. Although the colonies were subject to British oversight, the ability to elect representatives and pass local laws gave colonists a taste of autonomy. Over time, these systems encouraged the belief that governance should rest in the hands of the people, not a distant monarch. Colonial prosperity was tied closely to the Atlantic trade, a network that linked the Americas, Europe, and Africa in a dynamic exchange of goods, people, and cultures. Key colonial exports like tobacco, sugar, indigo, and rice fueled global markets, making merchants and plantation owners incredibly wealthy. Cities like Boston, New York, and Charleston thrived as bustling trade hubs, with docks lined by ships carrying goods to Europe. However, this economic success came at a human cost. The transatlantic slave trade brought millions of enslaved Africans to the Americas, where they became the backbone of plantation economies, especially in the South. Enslaved people worked grueling hours in harsh conditions, producing the crops that sustained colonial wealth. The reliance on enslaved labor entrenched social hierarchies. In the South, wealthy planters stood at the top of society, while enslaved people and poor laborers remained at the bottom. This rigid structure created deep divisions but also economic interdependence. Northern colonies, though less reliant on slavery directly, still benefited from the trade of goods produced by enslaved labor. The Atlantic trade not only shaped economies, but also cultures. African influences permeated colonial life, from music and storytelling to agricultural techniques. Despite the oppressive conditions, enslaved individuals resisted in various ways, preserving their cultural traditions, forming communities, and fighting for freedom whenever possible. Music, dance, and religious practices played a crucial role in keeping their identities alive and providing a sense of hope. These elements, born out of resistance, left an indelible mark on colonial culture. Rebellions like the Stono Rebellion in 1739 demonstrated that the struggle for freedom was ongoing, challenging the perception of an unshakable system of slavery. Yet these contributions were often unrecognized, overshadowed by the exploitation that defined the era. While the colonies prospered, their relationship with Britain became increasingly fraught. British trade policies, particularly the Navigation Acts, aimed to control colonial commerce, ensuring that the flow of goods benefited the mother country. Colonists were required to ship goods on British vessels and trade exclusively within the empire. While these policies enriched Britain, they frustrated colonial merchants who sought more freedom to trade with other nations. The sense of inequality grew as British officials frequently overruled colonial laws. For example, governors appointed by the Crown often vetoed decisions made by locally elected assemblies. This dynamic reinforced the idea that the colonies were seen as subservient, a source of wealth rather than partners in the empire. Moreover, Britain's distant rule meant that colonists were often left to their own devices in enforcing laws, a phenomenon known as salutary neglect. This period of relative autonomy fostered a sense of independence. But when Britain tightened control in the mid-18th century, colonists saw it as an unwelcome intrusion. These early tensions sowed the seeds of rebellion as colonial leaders began to view British interference as a threat to their hard-won self-governance. The colonies were not only shaped by external influences, but also by internal social dynamics. Religious revivals, such as the Great Awakening of the mid-18th century, swept through the colonies, uniting people across regions and denominations. Preachers like Jonathan Edwards and George Whitefield inspired a renewed sense of faith and challenged traditional religious hierarchies. These movements promoted ideas of individual moral responsibility and questioned established authority, laying a cultural foundation for the push towards independence. At the same time, the growing diversity of the colonies played a crucial role in shaping their identities. Immigrants from Germany, Scotland, and Ireland brought new traditions and skills, contributing to the colony's economic and cultural vibrancy. This mix of backgrounds, combined with the shared experience of living under British rule, began to foster a sense of shared identity among colonists, despite their regional differences. While economic and political forces shaped colonial society, religion played a vital role in uniting diverse groups. The Great Awakening, a series of religious revivals in the 1730s and 1740s, swept through the colonies, challenging established religious institutions and hierarchies. Preachers like George Whitefield delivered fiery sermons to packed audiences, emphasizing personal salvation and a direct connection to God. This movement broke down barriers between denominations, attracting colonists from all walks of life. Poor farmers, wealthy merchants, and enslaved Africans found themselves united in shared religious experiences. The egalitarian spirit of the Great Awakening resonated deeply, reinforcing the idea that all individuals had inherent value, a concept that would later underpin revolutionary ideals. At the same time, the revivals created tensions within communities. Traditional church leaders often resisted the emotional and egalitarian nature of the movement, seeing it as a threat to their authority. Despite this, the Great Awakening had a lasting impact, fostering a shared cultural experience across the colonies. This growing sense of unity was crucial in the colonies' eventual push for independence, as they began to see themselves as part of a larger whole, distinct from Britain.